And so we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understudy. A strange and quiet story from the vast, snowy lands of old Russia. A story that begins not with a king or a castle, but with mud and cold, and a single, radical idea that caught fire in the darkness. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you feel so inclined, you could even leave a comment, letting me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's a nice way to feel connected, in this quiet, shared darkness. Alright, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing. And together, let's allow the story to begin. Your world is a circle drawn in mud. You wake before the sun. You work the land of a master you will never meet. And you sleep when the last of the light is gone. This is the heart of Russia in the late 18th century, somewhere in the Oyol province, and your life is measured in seasons of back-breaking labor. The mud of spring gives way to the dust of summer, the mud of autumn, and forgiving ground of winter. It kicks your boots, stains your hands, and seems to seep into your very soul. The promises of the old church, the one with the onion dome you can just see from the fields, feel as distant as the Tsar Street. Petersburg. The priest drones on about paradise, but his words are just another sound, like the wind in the birch trees. They don't help when the harvest is poor, or when the master's agent comes to collect his due, leaving you with barely enough to survive. There is a hunger here that isn't just for bread, for a sign that all this suffering isn't just nothing. Then he arrives. He doesn't ride in on a fine horse or in a fancy carriage. He just appears one day at the edge of the village walking. He is dressed like a peasant, but his clothes are clean. His face is weathered, but his eyes are different. They hold a clear, unwavering light, a frightening sort of calm. He doesn't shout or preach from a soapbox. He just talks to people, one by one, in the quiet moments after work, his voice low and steady. His name, he says, is Andrei Selivanov. And his message is both terrifying and electrifyingly simple. He tells you that the world is drowning in sin. Not just the grand sins of the nobles, but the grubby, everyday sin that lives inside of you. The sin of desire. The sin that makes you look at your neighbor's wife, that ties you to this world of mud and disappointment. He says the priests are wrong. Baptism doesn't wash it all away. It's a stain on the soul, a root that grows deep within your flesh. You've heard of other groups, of course. The villages are full of whispers about the KHLYSI, the whips, or as your neighbors call them, the jumpers and leapers. They meet in secret, whipping themselves into a frenzy, dancing until they collapse, seeking God in a moment of ecstatic release. It's a way to feel something, anything, other than the endless grind. But this man, Selivanov, he scoffs at that. A fire that is quickly doused, he calls it. He says their ecstasy is temporary. The sin always grows back because they only trim the leaves, not the root. Historians still argue about these early days whether this new teaching was a deliberate, calculated schism from the KHLYSI, or just the fiery, personal vision of one man taking on a life of its own in the fertile soil of peasant mysticism. But for you sitting on a rough-hewn log as he speaks, it feels like truth. It feels like he sees the dirt inside of you, the same dirt you see on your hands every day. He talks of purity, a real, lasting purity. He speaks of becoming a white dove, a vessel for the Holy Spirit, clean and untainted by the desires of the flesh. He says that the Son of God did not die on the cross, but was saved, and has now returned to Russia to show the true path. And as he says this, his gaze sweeps over the small crowd gathered around him, and for a moment you feel he is speaking directly to you. He is not just a prophet, he is the returned Christ, who was rumored to have escaped his assassins. The stories get muddled, but the power in his eyes does not. He promises a way to kill the root of sin forever, a single act of faith, a fiery baptism more powerful than any water, a way to place a great seal upon your body, marking you as one of God's chosen few, forever free from the urges that chain you to this muddy earth. He doesn't explain what this great seal is. Not yet. The secret is too potent, too dangerous for a public gathering. But as the sun sets, casting long, dark fingers across the fields, he invites you and a few others to a private meeting. Not in a church, but in the village bonnier, the Bathish, a place of steam and shadows and secret. You feel a tremor of fear, but also a pull you cannot resist. It's a chance to finally wash away the mud inside and out. The air in the bonnier is thick enough to drink. It's a fog of steam and sweat, smelling of damp wood and the faint, clean scent of birch leaves. A single lantern hangs from a low beam, its oily light flickering and casting monstrous, dancing shadows on the walls. You can barely make out the faces of the half-dozen other villagers who followed you in here, their expressions lost in the gloom. You are all sitting on rough, splintery benches, the heat pressing down, making your simple linen shirt stick to your back. The world outside, with its cool night air and chirping crickets, feels a universe away. In the center of the small room stands K. Andretai Selivanov. The steam seems to part for him. He has removed his outer tunic, and in the dim light, you can see his body is a road map of hardship. But it's his face that holds you. The lines around his eyes aren't from laughter. They're etched by a conviction, so absolute it feels like a physical force. He isn't looking at the group. He is looking at the group. He is looking at the group. He is looking at each of you, individually, or all at once. He begins to speak, and his voice is not the voice he used in the village square. It is quieter, more intense, a sound that cuts through the oppressive heat. He doesn't begin with a prayer. He begins with a story. He speaks of his own past, a life mired in the same sin and despair as yours. He talks about his time with the KHLYSI, the jumpers and leapers. He describes their wild, spinning dances, the frantic energy of their secret gatherings, the feeling of God's presence arriving in a dizzying rush. But it was a fleeting God, he says, his voice dropping to a near whisper. He would arrive in the chaos, and he would leave in the morning silence, leaving only an aching body and the same old serpent, coiled and sleeping in our hearts. He pauses, letting the image settle in the steam-filled air. They whip their backs to tame the beast. Fools, you cannot tame it. You can only kill it. This is where his teaching takes a sharp, terrifying turn. Scholars to this day debate whether he truly broke from the KHLYSI tradition or simply perfected its chaotic ecstasy into a single, terrible, silent act. For you in this stifling room, it feels like he has discovered a truth so profound it had to be hidden from the world. He speaks of the flesh as a prison. The passions, the desires, the urges that define your waking life, he calls them the chains. The love for a wife, the pride in a son, the simple hunger for more than your share, all of it, he says, is the root of evil. It is what binds you to the endless cycle of muddy toil and fleeting joy. He conveniently never explains how he, a simple man, came to possess this ultimate, divine knowledge, but in his presence, to ask such a question would feel like a blasphemy. Then he holds up his hands. The scripture says, if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out; if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off. His voice rises, no longer a whisper but a low, resonant boom that seems to make the very planks of the bonnier vibrate. The priests tell you this is a metaphor. They tell you to pluck out the idea of sin. They are weak. They are weak. They are afraid of the truth. He takes a step forward, and the lantern light catches the strange, smooth, almost serene quality of his face. He looks ageless. You realize with a jolt that there is no stubble on his chin, no shadow of a beard like every other man you know. The Lord did not speak in riddles, Selivanov declares. He gave a command. He showed us the way to salvation, and the church, in its greed and comfort, hid it from you. The root of all sin, the source of all earthly chains, is not in your eye or your hand. It is deeper. It is the very font of life, the part of you that creates more bodies for sin to inhabit. He tells you he is the Redeemer, the Tsar who did not die, The Son of Man returned not to be worshipped in gilded churches, but to gather his true flock. He says he was the first to receive the fiery baptism. He was the first to take the knife, to cut away the root of evil within himself to become a true pure vessel. He claims to be living proof that one can exist beyond sin. He is a living saint, a eunuch for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. The secret is almost out. It hangs in the air, unspoken but understood with a gut-wrenching certainty. He isn't offering a theory. He is offering a procedure, a path to salvation that is carved not into your soul but into your soul but into your body. He calls his followers to be like little white doves. He paints a picture of a community of the pure, of men and women who have become like angels, their bodies no longer instruments of sin but clean vessels for the Holy Spirit. They will be brothers and sisters in a way no family has ever been, unburdened by lust, by jealousy, by the need to provide for children. They would be free, free to serve God, free to build a true kingdom on earth. He looks at you again, his eyes boring into yours. He doesn't ask for a show of hands. He doesn't demand an oath. He simply presents the path. One path leads back out the door, into the familiar cold night, back to the mud and the brief, messy, complicated business of ordinary life. The other path leads deeper into the steam, towards the fire, towards a promise of purity that will cost you everything you are. The steam in the bonnet begins to thin, not from any release of heat, but as if the intensity of Sel even of his words has burned it away. The silence that follows his sermon is heavier than the humid air ever was. No one moves, no one moves, no one speaks. The path has been laid out, and the price of walking it is now terribly, unavoidably clear. You look at the other faces in the lantern light, a blacksmith's apprentice, a farmer whose hands are permanently curled from a lifetime of gripping a scythe, an old woman who has buried more children than she has living. Each face is a mask of armed terror. Then one man gets to his feet. It's not the strong blacksmith boy, but a much older man, thin and weary, with a beard more grey than brown. His name is Piotr. You know him. His wife died last winter, and his only son was taken for the Tsar's army 20 years ago, never to be heard from again. He has nothing left to tie him to this world. He shuffles forward and kneels before Selivanov, his head bowed. "I will receive the seal," he says, his voice raspy. Selivanov places a hand on the old man's shoulder. He doesn't smile. This isn't a moment of profound, world-altering gravity. He motions to another man, a quiet, stern-faced follower who has been standing in the shadows. This man opens a wooden box you hadn't noticed before. Inside, resting on a bed of clean linen, are not surgical instruments, but tools that look strangely familiar. There are knives, yes, but also a small, sharpened piece of iron, almost like a miniature sickle, its handle wrapped in leather. Selivanov begins to explain, his voice calm and methodical, like a master craftsman teaching his trade. He tells you that the path to purity is taken in steps. The first, he says, is the lesser seal. This is the first gate, the initial sacrifice. He speaks of it not in terms of anatomy, but in terms of spiritual symbolism. It is the removal of the keys to Hell's Gate. It is the act that severs the primary cord that binds a man to the sin of Adam. While he speaks, the stern-faced assistant takes the small iron sickle and places its tip into the glowing embers of the Bonnier's stove. A low hiss fills the room. Selivanov explains that the baptism must be one of fire. The fire cleanses the tool, and more importantly, it cleanses the wound. It seals the flesh, preventing the body from bleeding its life away. Their medical knowledge was, let's be honest, a bit rudimentary and mostly faith-based, if excruciating form of cauterization. He speaks of the greater seal, a second, more profound step for those who seek an even higher level of purity. This is the complete removal of the serpent itself. But that, he says, is a path for the strongest, the most devoted. For now, the first gate is enough. The iron glows a dull, angry red. Piotr, the old man, is given a piece of leather to bite down on. He lies back on a bench, his eyes squeezed shut, his face pale in the flickering light. There is no anesthetic, only a low, rhythmic chanting that begins to fill the room. It's a sound without words, a deep hum from the chests of Sal Ivanov and his followers. It's hypnotic. You don't want to watch, but you can't look away. The moment itself is mercifully quick. A sharp intake of breath through the leather gag, the sickeningly sweet smell of seared flesh, and a sharp sizzle that cuts through the chanting. And then silence. Pietr's body goes limp, not in death, but in a profound, shuddering release. His face, when he finally spits out the leather, is beaded with sweat and tears, but behind the pain, there is something else. A kind of peace. A kind of peace. A terrifying peace. Just as you think you can process what you've seen, one of the women stands up. She is middle-aged, her face a familiar landscape of worry and work. She too kneels. Selivanov nods slowly. The path, he explains, is for everyone. Women have their own burdens, their own sources of sin to be cut away. For them the seal is different. He speaks of their breasts not as sources of life, but as sirens of temptation for men, and the source of a mother's earthly love, a love that distracts from the pure, divine love of God. And so another ritual is prepared. The process is horrificously similar, involving the same heated tools, the same chanting. The goal is to flatten the chest, to remove the very symbols of womanhood, to make the body a smooth, angelic, androgynous vessel. It's a little-known fact that the Skoptsy doctrine of mutilation was an equal opportunity creed of bodily denial. You watch this second act of faith, your stomach churning. Is this divine will, or a shared madness born of desperation? Historians and sociologists still fiercely debate the nature of consent in these closed, high-demand religious groups. In this room, it feels like a choice, a powerful, personal declaration. But from the outside, critics then and now would call it coercion of the highest order, where social pressure and the promise of salvation leave no real room for refusal. The woman, like Pietra before her, survives. She is helped to her feet, wrapped in clean linen, her face a mask of agony and ecstasy. Two souls in the room are now sealed. They are different. They have crossed a threshold you are still standing before. The stern-faced man retrieves the iron tool. He returns it to the fire. Selivanov turns his calm, unnerving eyes scanning the rest of you. His gaze lands on you. He doesn't need to say a word. The glowing iron in the embers asks the question for him. The glowing iron in the embers seems to hum a low, menacing song. Selivanov's eyes are on you, and in their depths you do not see a command, but an invitation to an ending. The end of the man you were, the one who toils in the mud, who feels the dull ache of loneliness in the long winters, who is plagued by dreams he cannot name. The fear is a cold knot in your stomach, but beneath it is a strange, liberating thought. What is there, really, to lose? A few more years of a life that feels like a story someone else is telling. You give a slow, deliberate nod. The world narrows to a series of sharp, vivid sensations. The rough texture of the bench beneath your back, the taste of worn leather between your teeth, the collective intake of breath from the small crowd. And then the fire. It is not a cut. It is a line of white heat drawn across the deepest part of you, a searing pain so immense it becomes something else entirely. It's a soundless thunderclap in your nerves, a flash of light behind your closed eyes, and then a strange and sudden distance. The pain is still there, a throbbing, undeniable reality, but it's happening to someone else. You are floating above it, looking down at the shaking body on the bench, a vessel that has just been emptied and scoured clean. Hands, gentle but firm, help you up. They wrap you in clean linen, which does little for the physical agony but works a strange magic on your spirit. You are one of them now. You have passed through the gate. The faces you look at are no longer the faces of neighbors or strangers. They are kin. Brothers and sisters, sealed in a covenant of shared sacrifice that is deeper than blood. Later, when the world has stopped spinning and the pain has subsided to a dull, constant throb, you are laid out of the banyan into the cool night, but you don't go back to your own small hut. You are taken to another, one that looks just as poor and unremarkable as the rest. Inside, however, the trapdoor is pulled back from the dirt floor, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. You go down. The air grows cool and smells of damp earth and stored potatoes. This is your first true secret meeting. The cellar is small, the ceiling so low that the blacksmith's apprentice has to stoop. A dozen or so people are gathered here, their faces illuminated by the soft, flickering light of tallow candles. All of them, you realize, bear the seal. Their faces have a similar quality, a strange calmness. A placid look in their eyes that you now recognize as the mark of those who have left the world of passions behind. There is no sermon here, no talk of fire and sacrifice. That part is done. This is the aftermath. This is the beginning of a new life. An old woman offers you a cup of KBS, the fermented rye drink that is the staple of your diet. It is cool and soothing. Someone else hands you a piece of black bread. It is a communion, simple and profound. You belong. For the first time in your life, you feel an absolute, unshakable sense of belonging. Then the singing begins. It is not the boisterous singing of a village festival, nor the formal chanting of the church. It is a low, melodious humming that rises from deep within their chests. These are the duck hov and I stick high, the spiritual verses of the sect. They sing of the white dove, of the coming kingdom of God on earth, of the soul's liberation from its prison of flesh. The lyrics are simple, the tunes hypnotic, repeating over and over, drawing you into a shared trance. Then a few of them stand up and begin to move. They start to spin. It's a vestige of their KHLYSI origins, the practice of Raiden IYE, or ecstatic revelation. But where the KHLYSI would spin into a frenzy, a chaotic blur of ecstatic release, this is different. It is slow, deliberate, graceful. Men and women, in their simple peasant shirts, turn in silent, solitary circles, their arms held out, their eyes closed. They look like planets in a silent orbit, each one a self-contained world, yet all moving in a shared, mysterious rhythm. They are not trying to escape themselves, they are celebrating the freedom they have already found. This is a point historians still argue about the true nature of these secret gatherings. Official court records, based on testimony from horrified outsiders or coerced apostates, describe them as debauched and chaotic. But the sect's own hymns and law speak of solemn, peaceful, angelic congress. The truth for you in this cellar is somewhere in between, an ecstatic joy, but a joy that is serene, controlled, and deeply internal. It's the quiet bliss of the liberated, not the frantic desperation of the seeker. You watch them spin, your own body aching too much to join in, but you feel the pull. You are part of this celestial dance now. The master, the endless to ill at all, seems like a half-remembered dream. Your reality is here, in this cellar, with these quiet, scarred, peaceful people. You are a white dove. The days that follow your fiery baptism are a blur of pain and revelation. You are kept hidden in the cellar, tended to by the other doves. They treat your wound with folk remedies, poultices of strange herbs and whispered prayers. Modern medicine would be horrified, but somehow you do not sicken. Perhaps it is the cauterization, or perhaps it is the sheer, unbending power of your belief that you are now beyond the reach of worldly corruption. During this time of healing, you learn the true structure of your new family. Tsar Ivanov is not just a prophet, he is the KORMKY, the helmsman. He steers the great vessel of faith. The community itself is a Korabl, a ship, and each member is a sailor, navigating the treacherous, sinful waters of the world toward the safe harbor of God's kingdom. It is a powerful metaphor, and you feel it deeply. Your little cellar community in the village of Oyol is one of the very first ships. You are the pioneers. The rules are established not by written decree, but by Tsar Ivanov's quiet pronouncements and the collective, intuitive understanding of the group. Life becomes radically simple. You still work in the fields by day, you must, to avoid the suspicion of the master's agent and the local priest. But your earnings, everything beyond what is needed for the barest subsistence, no longer belong to you, they belong to the ship. A small wooden chest is kept in the cellar, and into this chest go the spare kopecks, the saved portion of grain, the small profits from a well-woven baskets old at market. This is the God's coffer, At first it is a tiny fund, used to help a brother who is sick, or to buy clean linen for new initiates. It is a simple act of communal charity. But persecution, when it comes, changes everything. It starts with whispers. The village priest, a man with a nose for heresy and a belly for vodka, notices a change in his congregation. Fewer confessions, a certain look in the eyes of some of his parishioners, that serene, unnerving calmness. He hears rumors of strange gatherings, of men and women living and working together with a little too much brotherly affection. He denounces you from the pulpit, calling you defilers, blasphemous, followers of a dark and twisted path. Soon, the Tsar's local police arrive. They are clumsy, brutish men who tear through your huts looking for evidence. They find nothing. Your cellar is well hidden, your faith is invisible. But the threat is now real. The world outside your ship is not just ignorant, it is hostile. You learn the importance of secrecy, of the blank stare, of the carefully worded answer. You become an actor in your own life. The first arrest happens a few months later. A brother, not cautious enough, speaks openly to a cousin in a neighboring village. The cousin tells the priest tells the authorities, and the brother is dragged away in chains. You never see him again. The loss is a cold shock to your fledgling community. It is in this crucible of fear that the ship is truly forged. Your shared secret, your shared sacrifice, and now your shared enemy bind you together with a strength that family ties could never match. You rely on each other for everything. A coded phrase, "Have you seen the white?" It becomes a way to identify fellow believers in a crowded market. A certain way of tying a knot in a sash becomes a secret sign. This era of persecution is a subject of much academic debate. Some historians argue that the state's harsh reaction was the very thing that transformed the Skoptsy from a small, mystical sect into a resilient and highly organized underground network. The pressure, instead of crushing them, fused them into something harder and more disciplined. It's during this time that Tsar Ivanov himself is arrested. The helmsman is taken from you. To the authorities, it is the end of the story. They have cut the head off the serpent, but for you and the other doves, it is a test of faith. It is the prophecy fulfilled. The true Christ, they whisper in the cellar, must always suffer at the hands of the world. His imprisonment does not make him a criminal. It proves he is the Messiah. Without your leader, the ship must learn to steer itself. And it does. The community, born in ecstatic faith, now develops a practical, steely resilience. The God's coffer becomes more important than ever. It is used not just for charity, but for survival. To bribe a local official, to pay for a warning when a raid is planned, to help a family escape in the middle of the night. You are no longer just a community of believers. You are a secret society. The need to protect yourselves, to operate in the shadows, forces you to become organized, disciplined, and resourceful. The faith that led you to renounce the world now forces you to engage with it in a new and cunning way. And in that simple wooden chest, collecting kopecks in the dark, is the seed of something no one could have ever predicted. Life settles into a strange, dual rhythm. By day, you are a serf, an unremarkable face in the endless fields, head bowed, shoulders slumped in a convincing performance of drudgery. But by night, in the close, earthy confines of the cellar, you are a dove, a sailor on a holy ark, a keeper of a profound and dangerous secret. This double life becomes second nature. The real world is the ship, the outside world is a stage, and on this stage, you begin to notice something strange. Without the distractions of a family, your life becomes remarkably efficient. While your neighbors are fretting over a daughter's dowry or a son's drinking habits, your mind is clear. While they spend their meager extra earnings on cheap vodka to blunt the edges of a hard life, you abstain. Alcohol, like all earthly pleasures, is a sin that fogs the soul. While they are exhausted by the emotional turmoil of marriage and courtship, your energy is entirely your own, channeled into two things, your faith and your work. You find you have more time, more focus, more money. It's a simple equation, really. A man who does not need to feed a wife and a half-dozen children has a surplus of grain. A woman who is not raising a family has hours of extra time to spin the finest thread, which fetches a higher price at market. A family unit is a machine for consumption. Your community, your ship, is a machine for production. This is the great paradox that begins to define you. You have renounced worldly goods, yet you are becoming remarkably good at acquiring them. Your asceticism, your denial of the flesh, accidentally creates the perfect conditions for capitalism to flourish. It's an economic phenomenon that sociologists would later famously observe in other puritanical religious groups. But you are living it, breathing it, in a Russian cellar. The god's coffer, the small wooden chest, is no longer small. It is replaced by a larger iron-bound one. The trickle of kopecks has become a steady stream of silver rubles. At first, you don't even know what to do with it. The money is not for personal gain. To desire a fine coat or a better horse would be a sin. The money is for the ship. It is a tool for survival, a shield against the hostile world. You watch as the elders of your ship, the first converts, begin to use this growing wealth with a quiet, uncanny shrewdness. They buy the freedom of a brother who is still a serf. Suddenly he is his own master, and now all his earnings, not just the scraps, flow into the coffer. They purchase a small, failing grist mill from a local landowner who has gambled away his fortune. Suddenly, the ship is not just producing grain, it's controlling its distribution and taking a small fee from every peasant who uses the mill. You are not businessmen, you are servants of God. But it turns out that servants of God, when they are sober, disciplined, and celibate, make excellent businessmen. One of the most peculiar side effects of your new life is the trust you inspire. You are seen as odd, yes. The whispers follow you. But you are also seen as scrupulously honest. Why would a man who believes worldly possessions are a trap for the soul ever cheat you? You become known for fair dealings. Your thread is always the length it is said to be. Your grain is never mixed with stone. And then there's the other side of that trust. Because you have no children, you have no dynasty to build. A normal man's ambition is to leave something for his son. Your ambition is to leave something for the ship, for the eternal community of saints. This long-term, impersonal perspective makes you a stable and reliable economic actor. Historians still debate how conscious this economic strategy was in the early days. Was it a deliberate plan to build a financial empire, or was it the accidental byproduct of a religious greed? The evidence is sparse, clouded by the sect's own secrecy. But for you living it, it feels entirely organic. You are not seeking wealth. Wealth is seeking you. It is a gift from God, a sign of His favor, a weapon to be used in His service. You see it happen with your own hands. You are tasked with taking the ship's surplus flax to a regional market, a day's journey away. Your instructions are simple: sell for the best price, and do not be cheated. You spend the day observing, listening, noticing which merchants are desperate, which are flush. You are patient. By the end of the day, you have secured a price a full 10% higher than your neighbors. You return not with a sense of pride, but with a sense of quiet satisfaction. You have served the ship. The silver you place in the coffer feels heavier, cleaner, than any coin you ever earned for yourself. It is a strange and heady feeling. You are a holy warrior fighting not with a sword, but with an abacus and a ledger. You are building the kingdom of God, one silver ruble at a time. The world of mud and toil is fading, replaced by a world of numbers of profit and loss, of assets held in common for a divine purpose, and you are just getting started. The iron-bound chest in the cellar is now overflowing. Silver rubles, a few gleaming gold imperials, and a growing stack of promissory notes form a small mountain of worldly value in the heart of your unworldly community. The wealth is a comfort, a shield, but it is also a problem. Money that sits in a box is dead. It is a tool, and a tool must be used. The idea sprouts, as most things do in the ship, not from a single mind but from a collective need. One of your neighbors, a man not of your faith, a mortal, as you have come to call them, is in trouble. His horse has died just before the harvest. Without a horse, he cannot bring in his crop. His family will starve. He is a good man, but proud. He will not accept charity. During a meeting in the cellar, one of the elders, a man whose face is a placid mask, but whose eyes miss nothing, makes a simple suggestion. We will not give him the money, he says, his voice a low rumble. We will lend it to him. It is a revolutionary thought. Charity is one thing. Banking is something else entirely. But it makes a strange kind of sense. A loan preserves the man's dignity. It allows the ship's money to be put to good use. And, most importantly, when it is paid back, it will return with a small amount of extra rost or growth as a thank you for the service. The concept of charging interest is a thorny one, officially condemned as usury by the Orthodox Church. You are a law unto yourselves, and you see it not as usury, but as a way for God's coffer to grow so that it might help more people. So you become bankers. You are not like the professional moneylenders in the towns with their flashy clothes and predatory smiles. You operate out of your simple peasant huts. Your contracts are verbal agreements, sealed with a look and a nod. Your interest rates are, at first, surprisingly fair, far lower than any official alternative. You are not trying to get rich off your neighbors. You are trying to put God's money to work. Your reputation, already solid because of your honesty in trade, becomes legendary. The peasants and small merchants of the region quickly learn that the strange, quiet folk, the ones they whisper about, are the most reliable source of credit. When the official banks would demand Ender's paperwork and laugh a poor farmer out of the office, you would listen patiently, ask a few shrewd questions, and provide the funds. You have a secret advantage. You are an unparalleled intelligence network. Living as you do on the margins, you are expert observers of human behavior. You know who works hard and who is lazy. You know whose wife is thrifty and whose son is a gambler. You know whose land is fertile and whose is rocky. You never lend blindly. You are making calculated investments in the character of your neighbors. In a world with no credit scores, you have developed a perfect, intuitive system for assessing risk. A strange power dynamic begins to emerge. The local landowner, the one on whose land you are technically still serfs, finds himself in debt. He has a taste for French wine and a losing streak at cards. His agent comes to you, hat in hand, requesting a substantial loan to cover his master's indiscretions. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. You, the castrated religious fanatic, are now the ones propping up the lifestyle of the very noble whose sins you have vowed to transcend. The elders agree to the loan. The interest rate they charge the nobleman is, shall we say, significantly less generous than the one they gave the farmer who lost his horse. Business is business after all. One of the lesser-known aspects of the Skoptsy financial machine was their creation of these local, informal credit unions. They became the secret financial engine of entire villages, and eventually, entire regions. This is something official histories often miss, focusing on the more sensational aspects of the faith. But for you, this is the daily reality. You are no longer just members of a sect. You are the board of a secret, village-sized bank. You are called to a meeting. You are given a small leather pouch of coins and a name. Your task is to travel to a nearby town and collect a debt. The borrower is a merchant who has fallen behind on his payments. You arrive not as a thug, but as a quiet, persistent reminder. You sit in his shop. You do not threaten. You just wait. Your very presence, your calm, otherworldly patience, is more unnerving than any threat of violence. They know you don't need the money for yourself. They know you cannot be bribed or distracted. You are an instrument of the ship's will. The merchant, unnerved and ashamed, pays his debt. You are learning that power does not always come from a sword or a title. It can come from the quiet, unyielding pressure of a debt that must be repaid. The village fears you a little now. They respect you. They need you. You are becoming the shadow authority, the silent, secret bankers who hold the fate of the harvest, the mill, and even the local lord in your scarred, steady hands. As your financial influence grows, so does the risk. The ship is no longer a single community huddled in a cellar. It is a growing network of believers, a small archipelago of ships scattered across several provinces. Communication is vital. You need to be able to send messages, transfer funds, and warn of impending police raids. all without leaving a trace for the Tsar's ever watchful eyes. You cannot rely on written words. A single intercepted letter could doom you all. So, you develop a language of your own, a web of whispers woven from signs, symbols, and cleverly coded speech. It starts with simple things. The way you hold your walking staff might signal that you are carrying a message. The color of the thread used to mend a tear in your tunic could indicate the urgency. It's a silent, visual dialect that allows you to communicate across a crowded market square without a single word being exchanged. You learn this new language slowly, through a quiet instruction in the cellar. An elder will take you aside and show you. When you meet a man on the road and ask for a drink of water, he explains. If he answers, the well is deep but the spirit is willing, he is one of us. If he offers you caviars instead of water, he carries news from the helmsman himself. This secret language extends to your business dealings. Your ledgers, which you now meticulously keep, are a masterwork of obfuscation. To an outsider, they look like simple records of grain sales or flax shipments. But you know the code. A bushel of rye might refer to a sum of 100 silver rubles. A bolt of fine linen could signify a transfer of gold. A shipment to Tambov might mean a new ship has been founded and requires seed money from the god's coffer. Historians have spent decades trying to crack these codes with limited success. The Skoptsy system was so insular, relied so heavily on oral tradition that very few written keys have ever been discovered. It's a source of academic frustration that the full extent of their financial empire may never be truly mapped, because the map was never written down. It was held in the collective, disciplined memory of the believers. One of your tasks becomes that of a courier. You are sent on a journey to another ship, 3 weeks' walk to the south. You carry no money, no incriminating letters. You carry only a newly woven prayer rope, the kind used by Orthodox monks. But the number of knots, the spacing between them, and the type of wood used for the central bead, all of it is a message. It's a detailed financial report, a warning about a specific police informant, and instructions for a coordinated investment in a new river barge. To anyone else, it's a simple devotional object. To the initiated, it's a page of encrypted data. Your journey is a lesson in the reach of your network. In each village you pass through, you know how to find a safe house. You go to the local well at dusk and begin to hum a specific spiritual verse, a tune no one else would know. Sooner or later, a man or a woman will approach, humming the response. That night, you have a bed, a meal, and any news from the local ship. You are a single bee, but you are part of a vast, invisible hive. This network also allows for one of the sect's most unusual and effective business practices, the long-distance, no-interest loan to fellow believers. A ship in the north, flush with cash from the fur trade, can use a courier like you to send a message authorizing a loan to a ship in the south, which needs capital to buy up land. No money actually moves. It's a sophisticated system of credit swapping, an informal hawala system operating in the heart of terrorist Russia, a century before the term would be widely known. It's all built on the unshakable foundation of absolute trust. You trust your brother-doves with your life. Trusting them with your money is easy. Use it one night in a cellar far from your home, listening to the quiet reports. A brother, a traveling peddler, has just returned from the city of St. Petersburg. He speaks of the wealth there, the opportunities, the sheer scale of the commerce. He also speaks of the anonymity a great city can provide. In a village, you are the strange, celibate peasant. In a city of 1 million souls, you could be anyone. A merchant, a banker, a man of means. An idea begins to form, a whisper passed from ship to ship, carried by couriers with knotted ropes and coded phrases. The small ponds of village finance are no longer enough. To truly build God's kingdom, to protect the helmsman, to shield your people, you must sail your ship into the great ocean. You must go to the capital. The decision is made in the quiet, collective way that all great decisions are made within the ship. Not by a vote, but by a slow, dawning consensus. The helmsman, Selivanov, though still imprisoned, has managed to smuggle out a message, a prophecy, really. He speaks of a great white house in the capital, a spiritual palace that will serve as the heart of your faith. To build it, you need more than the profits from a grist mill. You need a presence in the very heart of the Russian Empire. You are chosen to be part of the first expedition. It's a quiet testament to your shrewdness, your loyalty, and your ability to wear the mask of the world. You trade your rough peasant tunic for the clothes of a provincial merchant, a simple but well-made woolen coat, sturdy leather boots, and a fur hat that speaks of modest success. You look in a sliver of polished metal before you leave, and a stranger looks back. The face is yours, but the costume feels alien. The journey to St. Petersburg is like traveling to another planet. You leave behind the familiar world of mud, wood, and seasons. The road widens, becomes cobbled. You pass through towns larger than any you have ever seen. And then on the horizon you see it, the golden spires of the capital, piercing the flat, marshy landscape like a divine promise. St. Petersburg is an assault on the senses. The sheer number of people, the noise of 1,000 carriage wheels on stone, the kaleidoscope of colors in the clothes of the wealthy. Impossibly grand palaces line the canals, their pastel facades reflecting in the dark water. For a moment you feel a peasant's awe, the vertigo that threatens to swallow you. But then you remember who you are. You are not a tourist. You are a sailor on a holy mission, and this grand, sinful city is the ocean you must now learn to navigate. You and your small group of brothers do not seek lodging in a fine inn. You find your way to the Haymarket, a sprawling, chaotic district of warehouses, cheap taverns, and teeming tenements. This is the city's underbelly, its engine room. A place where a few men with strange accents and quiet ways can disappear into the crowd. You rent a small, shared apartment above a cooper's shop. The noise and the smells are overwhelming. But here, you are anonymous. Your first days are spent in reconnaissance. You don't try to make deals. You just walk and watch and listen. You learn the rhythms of the city's commerce. You see how fortunes are made and lost on the grain exchange, how timber's frontier goods arrive at the port and are whisked away to the palaces on the Nevsky Prospect. It is a world of bewildering complexity, but at its heart, it is the same as the village market, just with more zeros at the end of the numbers. Your provincial accent and simple clothes, which you feared would be a disadvantage, turn out to be a brilliant disguise. The sophisticated merchants of the capital look right through you. They see a country bumpkin, a rustic trader, and they underestimate you. They don't see the disciplined mind behind your eyes, the razor-sharp focus honed by years of asceticism. They don't see the silent nationwide intelligence network at your back. Your first venture is modest. You use the ship's capital to buy a small consignment of high quality from a newly established ship near Pskov, bypassing the usual chain of middlemen. Using your coded messages, you know the true quality and the fair price far better than your competitors. You then sell it directly to a ship's captain who is outfitting a vessel for the London trade. The profit margin used by St. Petersburg standards small. But to you, it is a fortune. It is proof. The system works. The ship can sail in these waters. One of the curious and often overlooked elements of the Skoptsy's urban success was their mastery of logistics. While other merchants were sending unreliable messages and trusting corrupt agents, the Skoptsy could move goods and information along their own trusted network of believers with incredible speed and efficiency. What looked like a simple religious sect was, in fact, one of the most effective and vertically integrated trading companies in the Russian Empire. You slowly build your reputation. You are the quiet men who always have the goods, who always deliver on time, whose word is their bond. You begin to deal in other things: timber, furs, leather. You never touch alcohol, tobacco, or other sinful goods. You remain ascetics, living frugally in your small apartment, a stark contrast to the lavish lifestyles of the merchants you now count as your peers. All profits, every single ruble, are sent back into the network, funding other ships, bribing officials to ensure Selivanov's comfort in his monastery prison, and building the war chest for the White House of his prophecy. You have gone from a peasant in a field to a merchant in the imperial capital. You wear a different costume, you speak a different language of commerce, but you are unchanged inside. You are a white dove, a secret agent of God, operating deep in enemy territory. And the game you are playing is getting much, much bigger. The single room above the cooper's shop is no longer sufficient. Your operations have grown too large, too complex. With the ship's blessing, you secure a small counting house in a respectable, though not fashionable, part of the city. It has a heavy oak door, a barred window, and a back room where the real work is done. This room contains a large table, a few simple stools, an abacus, and your most important tool, the shadow ledger. It's a thick, leather-bound book. Unlike everything you do, it has two faces. The first several pages are a legitimate, if simplified, record of your trading company. Anyone who might inspect it, a tax collector, a suspicious police captain, would see the meticulous accounts of a moderately successful provincial merchant house dealing in flax and timber. The numbers all add up. The profits are modest. It is perfectly convincingly boring. But the real ledger starts in the back. You have to turn the book upside down, and the entries are written in a script that is a balza mix of Cyrillic letters, symbols of your own invention, and what looks like gibberish. This is the true accounting of God's coffer. Here, a symbol that looks like a drop of water might represent a fund of 1,000 rubles. A stylized drawing of a dove might denote the central treasury. The names of your clients and debtors are replaced with code names: the miller, the vologda brother, the officer. Managing this ledger is your sacred duty. Your mind, uncluttered by worldly distractions, becomes a powerful calculator. You track the flow of gold from a Siberian ship, enriched by the fur trade, to another near the Black Sea, which is investing in port facilities. You authorize the transfer of funds to bribe a provincial governor, an act recorded simply as an offering for the lame horse. You are not just a merchant anymore. You are a banker, a spy master, an accountant for a secret government. The sheer scale of the wealth is staggering. It is a river of gold flowing through your hands, yet none of it sticks. You still eat the same simple meals of black bread, cabbage soup, and caviars. You still wear the same plain, durable coat. The discipline of the ship is absolute. This detachment gives you a clarity that your competitors lack. They are driven by greed, by the desire for a bigger house, a faster horse, a more beautiful mistress. You are driven by a singular, abstract purpose, the glory of the ship and the coming kingdom of God. It makes you a more patient, more ruthless, and ultimately more successful player. A nobleman, his estate's mortgage to the hilt, comes to you for a loan. He is condescending, treating you like a peasant playing at business. You listen politely, your face a mask of placid humility. You examine his documents. You already know, through your network, that his most profitable forest is diseased and his chief steward is a thief. You grant him the loan, but at an exorbitant interest rate, him with the deed to his last solvent property as collateral, sneering at your provincial caution. You know with absolute certainty that you will own his property within a year. There is no triumph in this knowledge, only a cold, calculated satisfaction. You have turned his sin of pride into an asset for the ship. This practice of lending to distressed nobility became a hallmark of the Skoptsy financial strategy. They were masters of the leveraged buyout decades before the term was invented. Academics continue to debate whether this was a predatory tactic or simply a shrewd exploitation of a decadent and crumbling aristocracy. For you, it is simply logical. You are reallocating assets from the unworthy to the worthy. One day, an opportunity arises that tests the limits of your shadow empire. A major contract to supply the Tsar's army with sailcloth for the Baltic fleet is up for tender. It is a massive deal worth a fortune, but it is also politically dangerous. It will put you directly under the gaze of the imperial bureaucracy. In the back room of the counting house, you and the other Street Petersburg elders hold a council. The debate is quiet, intense. To bid is to risk everything. Not to bid is to shirk an opportunity sent by God. A message is sent, via a trusted courier with a knotted prayer rope, to the network of ships. The response comes back weeks later, a single, coded phrase that translates to, "The dove flies highest in the strongest wind." You will bid. You activate your entire network. You use your vast capital reserves to buy up raw flax supplies, cornering the market and driving up the price for your competitors. You use your intelligence network to learn the lowest bids of the other merchant houses. Your final bid is submitted at the last possible moment. It is audacious, precise, and just low enough to win. You, a secret member of a castrated religious sect, are now a primary contractor for the Imperial Russian Navy. The river of gold is about to become a flood. And as you sit in your quiet counting house, making the first entry for this new venture in the back of your shadow ledger, you feel a faint, unfamiliar tremor. It might be the thrill of playing the world's most dangerous game and winning. Your new life and street. Petersburg is a study in profound and lonely contradiction. By day, you move through the world of high finance. You meet with shipping magnates, factory owners, and the uniformed quartermasters of the Tsar's army. You speak their language of contracts, yields, and margins. Your name, once unknown, is now spoken with a certain respect in the exchanges and counting houses. You are the quiet man who gets things done, the merchant whose integrity is as solid as his gold reserve. But when the heavy oak door of your counting house is bolted for the night, you step out of that world and into another. You return to your shared apartment, which has not changed. It is still sparsely furnished, with simple wooden pallets for beds and a single table for meals. There are no paintings on the walls, no carpets on the floor, no comforts of any kind. Your evening meal is the same as it ever was: soup, bread, water. You possess a fortune that could buy half the street you live on, yet you own nothing but the clothes on your back. This is the discipline. This is the path. The wealth is a tool, not a reward. To enjoy it would be to fall back into the world of sin, to betray the seal you bear upon your body. The loneliness of your position is immense. You are surrounded by people, yet fundamentally separate from them all. Your business associates see you as an enigma, a provincial miser who's a strange but profitable quirk. They invite you to dinners, to the opera, to social gatherings where deals are sealed over wine and cigars. You always politely decline. I have simple tastes, you say, and they shrug, half pitying, half impressed. They cannot comprehend a life without pleasure. Your fellow dozen street, Petersburg, are your only true companions. But even here, a new kind of distance has emerged. You are one of the leaders now, a keeper of the deepest secrets of the shadow ledger. The weight of this responsibility sets you apart. The younger recruits, fresh from the villages, look at you with a mixture of awe and fear. You are a living testament to the success of the faith, but you are also a stern, unreadable figure. Communal warmth at the first cellar meetings feels a long way away. You have a room of your own now, a small, cell-like space at the back of the apartment. This is your only luxury, the luxury of silence. Here, you sit for hours in quiet contemplation, not praying in the conventional sense, but emptying your mind, reinforcing the wall between your inner, spiritual self and the worldly role you must play. It is in this room that the physical reality of your sacrifice makes itself felt most keenly. Your body is different. You no longer feel the cyclical urges and desires that dot other men. There is a quietness within you, a stillness that is both a blessing and a source of profound melancholy. You watch a family on the street below, a father lifting his laughing child onto his shoulders, and you feel a pang of something you cannot name. It is not regret. How can one regret salvation? The memory of a feeling you have long since excised. This is the sacrifice scholars can write about but never truly understand. Not just the physical act, but the lifetime of quiet, internal echo that follows. This strange existence, the celibate millionaire, was not unique to you. It became the defining characteristic of the Skoptsy elite. They were the spiritual merchants, figures of legend in the Russian business world, known for their uncanny success and their impenetrable private lives. A famous story, perhaps apocryphal, tells of a Skoptsy banker who, upon concluding a deal worth millions of rubles, went home to a supper of dry bread and radishes. Whether true or not, it captures the essence of your reality. One night, a crisis. A fire breaks out in a warehouse district, consuming one of your largest shipments of sailcloth. The financial loss is enormous. Your business partners are in a panic. Ruin seems certain. They gather at the counting house, their faces ashen. You arrive, calm and silent. You listen to their frantic calculations. Then you go to your back room. You consult the shadow ledger. You make a few calculations on your abacus. You return to the main room. The loss is regrettable. You announce your voice even. The ship will absorb it. We will fulfill the contract. They stare at you as if you are a magician. They do not understand that the wealth they see is merely the tip of a vast, submerged mountain of gold. They do not understand that you are not risking your fortune. You are risking God's. And God, you believe with absolute certainty, will provide. You walk home through the pre-dawn streets, the smell of smoke still in the air. The city is quiet. You are an island of stillness in a world of chaos, a gilded, empty room at the heart of a secret empire. The fire was a setback, but your recovery from it cemented your legend in the capital. The ship's ability to absorb such a catastrophic loss without flinching sent a ripple of awe and suspicion through the merchant community. Your credit is now limitless. Your reputation is granite. But this success brings with it a new, existential problem, one that haunts the quiet of your cell-like room at night. You are not making any more of yourself. Your faith offers eternal life for the soul, but for the community, it promises demographic oblivion. Every death is a dead end on the family tree. Every member who passes away is a permanent loss. The ship, for all its wealth, is a leaky vessel, and time is the relentless ocean. Without a way to bring in new sailors, you are doomed to sink. And so the business of new blood becomes the sect's most urgent and most controversial preoccupation. It is a matter of holy survival. Your strategy for recruitment is multifaceted, a strange mix of spiritual evangelism. The first method is the old way conversion. You and your brothers become quiet missionaries in the city's teeming underbelly. You seek out the desperate, the dispossessed, the ones for whom the world has already failed. You find them in the fop houses of the Haymarket, among the out-of-work artisans and the soldiers broken by the Tsar's brutal war. You don't preach fire and brimstone. You offer a warm meal, a clean place to sleep, a job. You bring a man into one of your workshops, teaching him a trade, giving him structure and purpose. You show him a community bound by sobriety. You introduce him to a world without the chaos of drink, the agony of desire, the burden of family. Only after you have healed his body and stabilized his life do you begin to minister to his soul. You tell him of the white dove, of the helmsman, of the path to a purity he can now, perhaps, begin to imagine. It is a slow, patient, and remarkably effective process. You are not selling a promise of paradise in the next life, you are offering a functional paradise in this one. The second method is more direct, and it leverages your financial power. You adopt. You find families crushed by debt, often debt owed to you, a peasant with too many mouths to feed, a small shopkeeper facing bankruptcy. You make them an offer. Give us one of your sons. Not as a slave, but as an apprentice. We will raise him, teach him a trade, give him a trade, give him a trade, give him a future he could never dream of. It is a chillingly practical transaction. For the desperate family, it is a lifeline. For you, it is a way to acquire a new generation. These boys are raised within the ship. They grow up surrounded by the quiet, disciplined doves. They are indoctrinated from a young age, taught that the mortal world is a place of sin and suffering, while the ship is a haven of peace and purity. By the time they come of age, the choice to receive the seal often feels not like a sacrifice, but like a natural, inevitable step into their full identity. This practice of adoption is one of the most contentious aspects of Skoptsy history. Outsiders and the state saw it as a monstrous form of human trafficking, of buying children to be mutilated. Within the sect, however, it was viewed as an act of supreme charity, rescuing a soul from a life of guaranteed sin and poverty. The historical verdict remains deeply divided, a stark example of how one group's salvation can be another's exploitation. Your role in this process is that of an assessor. You are sent to a village to meet a family who has fallen behind on their loans. You are not there to threaten or intimidate. You are there to observe the children. You look for intelligence in their eyes, for a sturdy constitution, for a temperament that might lend itself to the discipline of the ship. You watch a 10-year-old boy quietly mending a fishing net while his siblings squabble. You see the vocations. You make a quiet recommendation to the elders. A few weeks later, the boy is brought to the city to begin his new life as an apprentice in your counting house. You feel no guilt. You are offering him a key to the kingdom of heaven. You are securing the future of the ship. It is a holy work. But this aggressive recruitment, this absorption of the mortal world's children, does not go unnoticed. The whispers that followed you in the village are now growing into a roar in the capital. Stories circulate dark, exaggerated tales of children stolen tales in candlelit cellars. The Orthodox Church, seeing its flocks siphoned away, begins to preach openly against the soulless money changers. The Tsar's secret police, the dreaded third section, start to open files. The very success of your survival strategy is now casting a long dark shadow. The ship has grown large and wealthy, but in doing so it has become visible. And in the autocratic world of terrorist Russia, to be visible and to be different is to be in mortal danger. The shadow you now cast is long and deep. It is impossible to control a significant portion of the capital's grain trade, to be the silent banker behind a dozen noble houses, and to serve as a primary contractor for the Imperial Navy without attracting attention. For years, your extreme discretion and the sheer strangeness of your beliefs provided a kind of camouflage. The authorities simply didn't know what to make of you. Were you heretics? Were you heretic, or just a very eccentric guild of merchants? But the whispers have coalesced into formal reports, landing on the desks of men whose job it is to worry about such things. The Tsar, Alexander I, is a man of complex and often contradictory impulses. He is a mystic in his own right, intrigued by spiritualism and secret societies. For a time, this worked in your favor. He seemed content to let your community exist on the fringes, perhaps seeing you as a peculiar but harmless expression of Russia's deep spiritual fervor. However, the Tsar is also a ruler, and his advisors are beginning to frame your existence, not as a spiritual matter, but as a political one. They speak of a state within the state, a financial network that operates beyond imperial control, a secret society with its own laws, its own leader, and an allegiance that is not to the Tsar, but to an imprisoned prophet. In the paranoid world of the Russian autocracy, this is the one unforgivable sin. The first sign of the changing tide is subtle. A friendly official at the port, a man who has taken your bribes for years, suddenly becomes distant, evasive. He no longer shares information about upcoming ship arrivals. A loan application from a well-connected guards officer is abruptly withdrawn without explanation. The invisible web of influence you have so carefully woven begins to fray at the edges. Then the investigations begin. They are not overt raids, not yet. They are quiet, insidious inquiries. Men in plain clothes from the third section, the Tsar's political police, start asking questions in the Haymarket. They talk to your neighbors, your suppliers, your disgruntled former employees. They build a file, a mosaic of rumor, fact, and terrified speculation. You become aware that you are being watched. I'm in Moita across the street from your counting house for a little too long. A new dockworker asks a few too many questions about your shipping manifests. The city, which once offered the comfort of anonymity, now feels like a cage lined with eyes. You instruct your brothers to be even more discreet. The coded language becomes more obtuse. The shadow ledger is moved every night to a different hiding place. The pressure is immense. You are playing a high-stakes game of chess against a faceless opponent who has all the power. Every move you make, every deal you close is scrutinized. The strain begins to show in your community. The serene calm that was the hallmark of your faith is replaced by a tense, watchful vigilance. The cellar meetings are shorter, the spiritual songs sung in hushed tones. A historical debate still rages about this period. Was the crackdown on the Skoptsy part of a broader, empire-wide suppression of Freemasons and other secret societies, or was it a specific campaign driven by the sect's growing undeniable economic power? The truth is likely a combination of both. You were a perfect storm of the Tsar's greatest fears: religious heresy, political conspiracy, and an independent source of immense wealth. The first blow falls not on you in St. Petersburg, but on a smaller ship in a provincial town. A surprise raid. The local leader is arrested, his followers interrogated. They are looking for account books, for lists of names. Thanks to your disciplined secrecy, they find very little, but the message is clear. The Tsar's tolerance has run out. You are summoned to an emergency meeting of the St. Petersburg elders. The back room of the counting house feels smaller, the shadows deeper. For the first time, you hear a note of genuine fear in the voices of these iron-willed men. Some argue for dissolving the businesses, for melting back into the peasantry, for hiding the wealth and waiting for the storm to pass. It is you who speaks for defiance. You argue that to retreat now would be to betray everything you have built. The ship, you insist, is strongest in the storm. You propose a bold, almost insane strategy. You will not hide your wealth. You will use it. You will go on a campaign of bribery and influence on a scale you have never attempted before. You will find the cracks in the imperial edifice and pour your gold into them. You will try to buy your survival. It is a desperate gamble, a decision to fight the Tsar's government with its own favorite weapon, corruption. The elders agree. The river of gold is about to be weaponized. Your role shifts once again. You are no longer just a banker. You are now the paymaster for a secret war, while you wage your secret war of bribery in St. Petersburg, the object of your veneration, Kondraty Selivanov, lives a strange twilight existence. He is a prisoner, yet he holds court. He is confined, yet his influence has never been greater. The state, in its attempt to neutralize him, has accidentally turned him into a living martyr, and his prison into one of Russia's most unconventional holy sites. After his last arrest, he was not thrown into a common dungeon. The authorities, perhaps wary of making him too obvious a martyr, or perhaps because of the subtle influence of your gold, placed him in a comfortable confinement within the walls of the i.e. monastery in Suzdal. It is a gilded cage, a place of ancient stone walls and golden domes, meant to isolate him from his flock. The strategy backfires spectacularly. You have never met Selivanov in person since that first fateful night in the Bonya, but his presence is the magnetic north of your entire world. The stories that your network brings back from Suzdal paint a vivid picture. He is an old man now, his body frail, but his eyes still possess that terrifying, unwavering fire. He receives a stipend from the state for his upkeep, a pittance which he immediately gives away. His real wealth comes from the steady stream of gifts that your network funnels to him. His monastery cell is reportedly transformed into a bizarre throne room. Fine carpets cover the stone floor. Silks drape the walls. He sits on a carved wooden chair, dressed in a simple white robe, receiving a constant stream of visitors. And who are these visitors? Not just his own followers making the dangerous pilgrimage. Intrigued by the stories of the castrated Christ, members of the St. Petersburg elite board aristocrats, society ladies dabbling in mysticism, even disaffected intellectuals, make the journey to Suzdal to seek an audience with the famous prophet. This is a little-known fact of the era. For a time, visiting Selivanov became a fashionable, if eccentric, spiritual adventure for the Russian upper crust. It was like a trip to see an oracle. They would sit at his feet, ask for prophecies, and leave either bewildered or strangely moved, depositing a handsome donation on their way out. The monastery abbot, a man who should have been Selivanov's jailer, becomes his business manager. He controls access, accepts the donations, and, for a substantial cut, ensures the prophet's comfort and relative freedom within the monastery walls. Selivanov's pronouncements from his gilded cage become the holy scripture of your faith. They are smuggled out by trusted doves, scraps of paper with cryptic verses, or messages memorized and passed down the chain of whispers. He speaks of the coming end of the sinful world, of the Tsar as the Antichrist, and of the ultimate triumph of the white doves. His words, filtered through the prism of his martyrdom, are more potent than any sermon he ever gave as a free man. For you in St. Petersburg, Tsar Ivanov's confinement is both a source of inspiration and a constant, pressing strategic problem. Protecting him, ensuring his relative comfort, and maintaining the lines of communication are among your highest priorities. It consumes a significant portion of the ship's resources. When you authorize a payment recorded in the shadow ledger as new vestments for the Suster Labbet, you know it is the price of keeping your profit safe. But his growing fame is a double-edged sword. While it awaits your followers and intrigues high society, it also infuriates the hardliners in the Tsar's government. They see the situation not as a successful imprisonment, but as a national embarrassment. A heretic is holding court in a state-sanctioned monastery, creating a cult of personality that mocks both the church and the crown. The pressure to do something, to silence him for good, is building. Then, one day, a courier arrives breathless. He carries a coded message, not from Sustal but from an informant within the third section itself, an informant but has cost you a fortune to cultivate. The message is short and chilling. The Tsar has lost his patience. A special commission has been formed. They are preparing to move Tsar Ivanov from the comfortable monastery to a place of true punishment, a place of silence and solitude from which no message will ever escape. The news hits your small community like a physical blow. The helmsman is in danger. Your entire purpose of your vast financial empire is threatened. You must act. But how can you, a handful of secret merchants, stand against the full, crushing weight of the Tsar's will? The threat to Tsar Ivanov galvanizes your network into a flurry of desperate, silent activity. The river of gold becomes a torrent. You bribe everyone you can reach, clerks, guards, secretaries to secretaries, trying to delay the inevitable, to sow confusion in the bureaucratic machine. But it's like trying to stop a tidal wave with a bucket. The will of the autocrat, once set in motion, is a powerful and relentless force. Yet, in this moment of crisis, as you activate every node in your vast web of influence, you become aware of just how powerful you truly are. Your desperate attempts to save your profit reveal the true extent of your hidden empire. This period, right before the fall, is the absolute zenith of your sect's power. From your counting house and street, Petersburg, you are not just a merchant, you are the unofficial treasurer of a secret nation. The shadow ledger tells the story. You control a string of successful businesses, trading houses in the capital, shipping concerns in the port of Riga, textile mills in the heartland, and vast agriculture operations in the fertile southern provinces. Each one is a ship, a community of believers working with tireless, ascetic discipline. Your financial services have become indispensable. You are the lender of choice not just for peasants and nobles, but for the burgeoning class of industrialists. They come to you because you are fast, discreet, and have access to seemingly limitless capital. It is a widely known, if unspoken, secret of the time that several of Russia's first great factories were built with Skoptsy gold. You are, quite literally, funding the industrialization of the empire that is trying to destroy you. Your intelligence network is second to none. Your couriers, disguised as peddlers and pilgrims, are faster and more reliable than the Tsar's official post. You have informants not just in the police, but in the army, the civil service, and even, it is whispered, in the Winter Palace itself. You know about crop failures before the Minister of Agriculture does. You know about troop movements before the generals do. This information is more valuable than gold, and use it to make shrewder investments, to anticipate market shifts, and to protect your people. The sheer amount of wealth under your control is a subject of intense historical speculation. Because your records were so meticulously hidden and coded, no one knows the true figure. Some sober academic estimates place it in the millions of rubles, a colossal fortune for the time. More sensational accounts claim that, for a brief period, the Skoptsy sect was one of the wealthiest single organizations in the entire Russian Empire, rivaling some of the great noble families. Living at the center of this web, you feel the immense, intoxicating power. A quiet word from you can ruin a man or make his fortune. A coded instruction sent from your office can move thousands of pounds of goods across the continent. You have achieved a level of influence that the peasant in the muddy field could never have imagined. You are a king in all but name, ruling a kingdom with no borders, no army, and no flag. But it is a kingdom built on a single, fragile point of faith, the life of one old man in a monastery cell. And you are failing to protect him. Despite your bribes and your best efforts, the state's plan moves forward. Selivanov is removed from the Evfimiev monastery. He is taken, under heavy guard, to a fortress prison, a place of cold stone and absolute isolation. Communication is completely cut off. The oracle is silenced. The news sends a shockwave through your network. For the first time, your gold was not enough. Your power had a limit, and you have found it. A deep gloom settles over the ship. In the cellar meetings, the songs are more like dirges. The ecstatic spinning ceases. There is a palpable sense of confusion, of a world knocked off its axis. You feel it too, a cold dread. But you also feel a grim resolve. They have taken your profit, but they have not taken your power. The businesses still run. The gold still flows. The network still holds. You have built an engine that can, perhaps, run without its creator. You make a decision. The defensive war is over. You will now use your power not just to protect, but to grow, to expand, to become so deeply embedded in the economic life of the empire that they cannot cut you out without killing the host. You will make the ship unsinkable. The peak of your power was not a prelude to victory, but a prelude to a new, more dangerous phase of the war. You are fighting for survival now, and you will use every weapon at your command. The Tsar, Alexander I, eventually dies. His reign is a strange mixture of mystical leanings and autocratic severity. For a brief, hopeful moment, you wonder if his successor will be different, perhaps more tolerant. But the man who ascends the throne is not a mystic. He is a soldier. Nicholas I is known as the Iron Tsar, and the name is well earned. He is a man of rigid discipline, unbending order, and a deep, obsessive hatred for anything that smells of secrecy, dissent, or unauthorized power. He is the embodiment of the worldly evil you have fought against in the shadows. Nicholas sees secret societies not as a spiritual curiosity, but as the seed of revolution. His reign begins in the shadow of the Decembrist revolt, a failed uprising led by a small group of liberal army officers. The event traumatizes him, confirming his deepest fears. He crushes the revolt with brutal efficiency and spends the rest of his life building up never happens again. He strengthens the third section, expands its network of spies and informants, and declares war on any group that does not bow to the absolute authority of the Tsar, the state, and the Orthodox Church. Your ship, once a mere annoyance to the authorities, is now classified as a major internal threat. You are no longer just heretics, you are subversives. The atmosphere in St. Petersburg changes almost overnight. The air grows thick with suspicion. The quiet inquiries of the old regime are replaced by overt, aggressive surveillance. Uniformed gendarmes now stand openly on the street corner near your counting house. Your business partners, men who once courted you for your capital, now avoid you in public. The web of influence you so carefully built with your gold begins to dissolve in the heat of the news Oz's ideological furnace. Nicholas I is not a man who can be easily bribed. His officials, terrified of their master's wrath, are less susceptible to your influence. A payment that once guaranteed a blind eye is now just as likely to be reported, leading to the arrest of both the briber and the intended recipient. Your most powerful weapon is becoming useless. The Iron Tsar's approach is methodical and relentless. He is not interested in just trimming the leaves, like Selivanov. He wants to destroy the root. He commissions a comprehensive, empire-wide study of your sect. He wants to know everything: your beliefs, your rituals, your leaders, and most of all, your financial structure. He understands, in a way his predecessor never did, that your power comes not from your strange theology, but from your money. You learn through your dwindling network of informants that a secret edict has been issued. It calls for a coordinated, systematic campaign to liquidate the Skoptsy conspiracy. This is not to be another series of sporadic provincial raids. This is to be a war. One of the lesser-known details of Nicholas I's reign is this personal obsession with the Skoptsy. He saw in them a perfect storm of everything he despised. They disobeyed the state, they controlled dark money, and their core ritual was an affront to the natural, God-given order of the world. It was a deeply personal crusade. You feel the hammer being raised. You try to prepare. You move assets, hide ledgers, and send warnings down the chain of whispers. You instruct your brothers to be prepared for the worst. But how do you hide an empire? How do you make a fleet of ships invisible? The first blow of the new era is a devastating one. Your main trading house in Riga, a vital link in your access to international markets, is seized. The local leaders are arrested, the warehouses sealed, the account books confiscated. The official justification is tax evasion, a charge so mundane it is almost insulting. But you know what it is. It is the first move in a campaign of economic strangulation. You are in the back room of your street, Petersburg counting house, when the news arrives. For the first time, you see true despair on the faces of the elders. The game has changed. Your opponent is no longer a corrupt and somewhat lazy bureaucracy. It is a single, iron-willed man with the resources of an entire empire at his command. The Iron Tsar's hammer is poised to fall, and you are standing on the anvil. You look at the coded entries in your shadow ledger, the record of your phenomenal success, and you have to wonder if it has all just been a history of a house of cards, waiting for a single, ruthless gust of wind. The war, when it comes, is not a war of soldiers, but of bailiffs, prosecutors, and public opinion. The Iron Tsar understands that to crush you, he must not only break your finances but also destroy your mystique. He must drag your secrets from the cellar and expose them to the horrifying gaze of the mortal world. He initiates a series of show trials, meticulously choreographed events designed to shock and repulse the Russian public. It begins in St. Petersburg. One morning, you awake to the sound of splintering wood. The heavy oak door of your counting house is smashed open by uniformed gendarmes. They storm in, shouting, overturning furniture, seizing everything. You and your brothers are arrested, not with the quiet discretion of previous encounters, but with a loud, public brutality. You are dragged out into the street in your nightshirts, bound in chains, and paraded through the gawking crowds towards the Peter-and-Paul fortress, the most infamous political prison in the empire. The purpose of this humiliation is clear: to strip you of your aura of respectable merchants and reveal you as the freaks the state now claims you are. The trial is a masterpiece of state propaganda. The courtroom is packed with journalists, society figures, and priests, all eager for a glimpse of the monstrous heretics. The prosecutor, a man handpicked for his theatrical flair and ideological zeal, does not focus on your bodies. He focuses on your bodies. He brings in expert witnesses, doctors who have been paid to deliver lurid, wildly inaccurate testimony about your rituals. They describe your fiery baptism in gruesome, sensational detail, painting you as bloodthirsty fanatics who prey on innocent children. The charge is not just heresy, it is a crime against nature, against God, and against the Russian soul itself. Then they parade in the state star witnesses, apostates, former members of the ship who, under the threat of torture or the promise of leniency, have agreed to testify against you. Their stories are a heartbreaking mix of truth and coerced lies. They speak of the secret cellar meetings, the coded language, the shadow ledgers. But they also speak of things that never happened, of dark rituals and depraved acts, their eyes hollow with shame as they betray their brothers to save themselves. Sitting in the defendant's cage, you watch this spectacle with a strange sense of detachment. It is like they are describing a different religion, a grotesque caricature of your quiet, ascetic faith. You are forbidden to speak in your own defense. Your attempts to explain your beliefs are shouted down by the prosecutor as blasphemous ravings. The most damning evidence from the public's perspective is your own bodies. You and your fellows are subjected to humiliating physical examinations, and the results are announced in open court. The irrefutable physical proof of the Great Seal sends a wave of revulsion through the courtroom. The whispers turn to gasps of horror. In that moment, you are no longer men. A small, almost forgotten historical detail is that these trials were some of the first in Russia to use the press as a deliberate to love state policy. Newspapers across the empire reprinted the salacious testimony, often with lurid illustrations. The Skoptsy, once a shadowy rumor, were now the official boogeyman of the nation, a terrifying bedtime story used to frighten children and enforce conformity. You are, of course, found guilty. The sentence is preordained, but it is not a simple execution or a quick imprisonment. The irons wants to make an example of you. He wants to break not just your bodies, but your spirit, and most importantly, your network. The judge, his face a mask of solemn piety, sentences you to the cat or be forced labor in the Siberian mines, followed by permanent exile. But first, you are to be subjected to the gauntlet. You will be publicly flogged, a ritual of degradation designed to shatter your will before the long journey east even begins. As you are led from the courtroom, you catch the eyes of a young recruit in the crowd, a boy you helped bring into the ship. His face is pale with terror. You give him a look not of despair but of command. It is a final silent message, passed from one to another: survive. Preserve the ship. The story is not over. The great Skoptsy trials, as they came to be known, are a matter of historical record. But the academic debate continues. Was this the efficient crushing of a dangerous cult, as the state claimed, or the brutal persecution of a peaceful, if eccentric, religious minority? For you, chained and waiting for the lash, the distinction is meaningless. The hammer has fallen. The world shrinks to the space between two lines of soldiers. They stand shoulder to shoulder, forming a grim, living corridor in the middle of a dusty prison yard. Each soldier holds a birch rod, thick as a man's thumb, limber and vicious. This is the gauntlet, a punishment designed not just to inflict pain, but to systematically dismantle a person's dignity, piece by piece, lash by lash. You are stripped to the waist, your hands tied to the musket of an escorting guard who marches slowly ahead of you. The first blow lands between your shoulder blades. It's not a whip which cuts, it's a rod which thuds and bruises, a deep, sickening impact that dries the breath from your lungs. The second follows, then the third. You begin your slow walk down the line, a human nail being hammered into the earth. There is no glory in this, no ecstatic martyrdom. It is just a methodical, brutal calculus of pain, with each step another blow. Your back becomes a landscape of welts, then a raw weeping canvas. The crowd of spectators, other prisoners and officials, roars with a mixture of horror and delight. They want you to scream, to beg. It is part of the theater. But you do not scream. You bite down on the inside of your cheek until you taste blood. You focus on the one thing they cannot touch, the quiet, still center of your faith. You are a white dove. Your body is a prison of flesh, and this pain is simply the world rattling the bars of your cage. You retreat into that inner silence, a place where the thud of the rods becomes a distant, meaningless drumbeat. You walk the entire length of the gauntlet, 1,000 blows, 1,000 blows, 1,000 blows, and you do not make a sound. Your silence is a final, infuriating act of defiance. When it is over, you collapse into the dust, not from a broken will, but from a body that can no longer obey it. They throw buckets of salt water on your backache raw, traditional form of disinfectant that feels like being set on fire all over again. And this is just the beginning. The journey to Siberia is the true punishment. You are chained together with other convicts, murderers, thieves, and you're followed as forming a shuffling, clanking column of human misery. This is the ETAP, the infamous forced march across the continent. You walk for months, through the mud of autumn and the brutal, soul-crushing cold of winter. Your food is black bread and watery soup. Your shelter at night is a series of squalid, overcrowded transit prisons, dens of violence and disease. The mortals among the convicts treat you with a mixture of contempt and superstitious fear. They call you the God's Lambs, a name that is part mockery, part grudging respect for your strange, silent endurance. You and your brothers stick together, a small, quiet island in a sea of despair. You share your rations. You tend to each other's wounds. You hum your spiritual verses so quietly that only you can hear them. The familiar melodies a bomb against the endless, frozen landscape. This journey was a deliberate instrument of state policy. It was designed to be lethal, Many prisoners did not survive, succumbing to exhaustion, frostbite, or typhus. For the state, this was not a bug in the system, it was a feature. But you and your brothers, hardened by years of ascetic discipline, proved to be unavengable resilient. You are accustomed to hardship, to meager food, to the denial of bodily comfort. While the other convicts curse and fight in despair, you endure with a placid, infuriating calm. Your faith, born in a cellar, is perfectly suited for survival in a prison camp. One of the more obscure historical realities of the Siberian exile system is how different groups adapted. Criminals formed gangs, and the Skoptsy, as you are now discovering, formed a ship. You are a community, even in chains. Your shared sacrifice, the seal upon your bodies, binds you with a strength the guards and the other convicts cannot comprehend. You finally arrive at the mines of Engelstein, a frozen corner of the earth that feels like the bottom of the world. The landscape is a monochrome nightmare of grey rock and white snow. Your life is now measured in the ringing of a pikosk against a vein of silver ore. The work is brutal, dangerous, and mind-numbing. It is meant to break you, to erase every last vestige of the man you were. But as you stand in the freezing darkness of the mine shaft, your breath plumbing in the lantern light, you look at the faces of your brothers, their serene expressions strangely untouched by the filth and the misery. They have taken your money, your freedom, your homes. They have brutalized your bodies. But they have not taken the ship. The journey was long and terrible, but it was not an ending, it was a relocation. The mine is a world without a sun. Your days are governed by the clang of a bell, your vision limited to the sputtering halo of the tallow lamp on your cap. The air is cold and tastes of damp rock and metal dust. Your work is a rhythm of three sounds, the clink of your pikosk striking the ore, the scrape of your shovel on the stone floor, and the rumble of the cart being hauled away into the darkness. It is a life reduced to a single, repetitive, exhausting motion. It's the perfect machine for grinding a man into dust, but the machine is not working on you. For the common criminal, the cat auger is a vicious ecosystem of survival. A war of all against all for an extra crust of bread, a moment's respite from a brutal guard. They gamble, they fight, they form shifting, treacherous alliances. They are broken by the monotony because their minds have nothing else to hold on to. You, however, are not an individual. You are a component of the ship, and the ship, you discover, floats even in this frozen, subterranean sea. It begins with the quiet, instinctive discipline that is now second nature to you. You and your brothers pool your rations. While other prisoners devour their daily portion in moments, you create a common store. The man who is strong shares his portion. It is the principle of the God's coffer, reborn in a place of absolute scarcity. Your small, disciplined group is healthier, stronger, and more resilient than any other faction in the camp. The camp authorities, lazy and corrupt men who are exiles themselves in all but name, begin to notice. They see that your work crews are more efficient. You do not shirk your duties. You do not fight. You do not cause trouble. You are, in a twisted way, the perfect prisoners. And so a strange and unholy alliance begins to form. The guards start assigning you and your brothers to the less dangerous, more strategic jobs. You are moved from the mine face to the workshops repairing tools. You are put in charge of the storerooms, doling out supplies. One of you, a man who was once a bookkeeper in your Riga trading house, is even given a position in the camp commandant's office, tasked with trying to make sense of the hopeless accounts. This was a bizarre and consistent feature of the Siberian exile system. Groups with strong internal cohesion and discipline, whether they were old believers, do yokai hobo RS, or, in your case, Skoptsy, often ended up in positions of relative privilege. The state that exiled them for being too organized paradoxically came to rely on their organizational skills to run its undysfunctional penal colonies. From these new positions your power grows. You control the distribution of tools. You know when a new shipment of food is arriving. The bookkeeper in the commandant's office learns the guard's rotation schedules. You are rebuilding your intelligence network from the inside out. The ship, which was once just your small band of brothers from the street, Petersburg trial, begins to find others. A new column of prisoners arrives from a trial in Tobolsk, and among them are a dozen doves. You learn to recognize each other, a certain stillness in the eyes, a quiet refusal to join in the barracks vulgarity. You use the old codes, a hummed verse in the mess line, a specific phrase dropped in conversation. The dove flies, even in winter, you might murmur, and its wings are never cold. You know you have found another brother. Your frozen ship is being reassembled, plank by plank, right under the noses of your jailers. And with the network comes the return of commerce. You begin a micro-ending operation within the camp. You lend a portion of bread to a starving, mortal convict in exchange for his tobacco ration, which you then use to bribe a guard. You use your control of the storerooms to trade favors. You are, once again, becoming the secret bankers, the shadow authority, but your currency is now bread boots and information instead of gold. Historians argue about this phase of your history. Did the economic engine of the Skoptsy truly survive the arrests and exile? Or was this new prison economy a separate phenomenon, a spontaneous creation born of necessity? For you, there is no debate. You are doing what you have always done. You are applying the unshakable principles of the ship to a new and hostile environment. The market has changed, but the methods are the same. You are no longer just surviving. You are consolidating. The Tsar sent you to the end of the world to be destroyed. But he has inadvertently created the perfect, isolated environment for you to regroup, to purify your ranks, and to plan. You are a frozen seed, buried deep beneath the snow, and you are just waiting for the thaw. While you are rebuilding your community in the frozen darkness of Siberia, the Iron Tsar's government is embarking on a very different kind of excavation. Having broken your leadership and seized your public-facing businesses, they are now engaged in a massive, empire-wide treasure hunt. They are chasing the ghost of the Skoptsy fortune. The prosecutors at your trial presented lurid tales of your wealth, of cellars overflowing with gold and silver. Now the state wants to collect. The third section, armed with confiscated ledgers and the coerced testimony of apostates, begins a systematic campaign to seize your assets. They are convinced they are about to uncover one of the largest private fortunes in Russian history. They are in for a profound disappointment. But if Sangendums descend upon the homes and businesses of known Skoptsy from St. Petersburg to the rural heartland, they tear up floorboards, knock down walls, and dig up gardens. They find a little here, a little there, a small cache of silver coins hidden in a grain silo, a few gold imperials sewn into the lining of a mattress. It is a respectable amount, but it is nowhere near the vast sums they were expecting. It is like trying to catch a river in a bucket. But the river itself has vanished. The problem for the state is that they are thinking about wealth in the wrong way. They are looking for a central treasury, a dragon's hoard, a single, physical location where all the gold is kept. But that is not how the ship works. Your fortune was never centralized. It was a fluid, decentralized network of assets, constantly in motion, held in 1,000 different forms by 1,000 different people. Some of it is in the form of outstanding loans, recorded in coded ledgers that are now hidden or destroyed. How can the state collect a debt when it has no record of it? Much of it is held not by identifiable Skoptsy, but by trusted mortal front men, merchants and bankers who did business with you and, for a price, were willing to hold your assets in their name. These men, when questioned, professed total ignorance, and a great deal of it, you know, has been deliberately hidden. Long before the hammer fell, as the Tsar's intentions became clear, the elders initiated a plan. Couriers crisscrossed the empire with a single, coded instruction: sink the treasure. It was a command to disperse the central funds, to break the larger caches down into countless small, untraceable ones. Gold was entrusted to loyal relatives, buried in forests, sewn into the clothes of pilgrims, or smuggled out of the country altogether. This vanishing act of the Skoptsy fortune is a source of enduring fascination for historians. It's a classic story of hidden treasure, with many scholars believing that a significant portion of the sect's wealth was never recovered by the state. It fueled rumors for generations, with tales of peasants stumbling upon pots of Skoptsy gold while plowing their fields. From your frozen exile, you hear whispers of this great treasure hunt. News trickles in with new arrivals or in heavily censored letters. And you feel a grim, quiet satisfaction. You, a prisoner in chains, are winning this final, posthumous battle against the Iron Tsar. You have denied him the prize he sought most. You have protected God's coffer. You see a microcosm of this financial wizardry even in the camp. Before one of the older brothers, a man who had been a wealthy merchant in a Kut before his arrest, passes away. He calls you to his side. He is dying, but his mind is clear. He gives you a series of seemingly nonsensical instructions. Tell the baker in Omsk that the 40 loaves are now leavened. Tell my nephew to check the third post of his cattle shed. Tell the widow Ivanova that the white dove has flown home. You commit his words to memory. They are not the ramblings of a dying man. They are the keys to his hidden assets. 40 loaves is the code for a sum of money. The third post is a hiding place. The message to the widow is the authorization to release a fund she has been holding. You are his financial executor. You are ensuring that even in death, his wealth is passed back to the ship. The state with all its power, its police, its army of bureaucrats, is playing checkers. You have always been playing chess. They can seize your property and imprison your bodies, but they cannot seize a system of trust. They cannot confiscate a promise. The real Skoptsy fortune was never the gold. It was the network, though battered and scattered, is still alive. The ghost gold is safe, waiting for the day when the ship can once again set sail. Years bleed into one another in the great twilight of the Siberian Katorga. The rhythm of the Pekosk, the clang of the bell, the biting cold, these are the constants of your new world. The Iron Tsar, Nicholas I, eventually dies, his reign ending in the humiliation of the Crimean War. His successor, Alexander II, is a reformer. He is the Tsar liberator, the man who will finally emancipate the serfs. A wave of optimism, a thaw, sweeps across the Russian Empire. For you and your brothers, this new era brings a tangible change. The brutal conditions of the forced labor camp are eased. Your sentences are commuted from katorga to simple exile. You are allowed to leave the mines and settle in designated villages in the vast, empty expanse of Siberia. You are no longer prisoners, but you are not free. You are colonists forbidden to leave the region, forever marked by your past. This new freedom, however limited, presents a new and unexpected challenge. The ship, which was forged in secrecy and hardened by persecution, now faces a more insidious enemy, peace. In the mines, your unity was absolute. Your survival depended on it. You were a single organism huddled together against the cold. But now, scattered across a handful of desolate Iberian villages, living in your own small huts, that intense, constant contact is gone. You are still a community, but you are a community at a distance. And in that distance, cracks begin to appear. The first point of friction is, ironically, your success. Applying your old principles of discipline, sobriety, and communal economics, you quickly become the most prosperous settlers in the region. Your farms are the most productive, your workshops the most efficient. You rebuild a semblance of your old financial power, lending money to your less successful Russian and native Siberian neighbors. You become once again the secret bankers of your small, frozen world. But this new wealth is different. It is not the vast, abstract fortune of the street, Petersburg counting house, managed for a distant, divine purpose. This is local wealth. It is a well-fed cow, a sturdy new roof, a warm fur coat. It is tangible, personal, and for some it is tempting. A younger brother, a man who was just a boy when he was arrested, begins to build a house for himself that is just a little larger than the others. He buys a horse that is a little finer. These are small things, but they violate the core principle of the ship. All wealth is for the community. Personal accumulation is a sin. The elders, including you, quietly admonish him. He is resentful. He argues that his hard work has earned him these small comforts. It is the first time you have heard a brother use the word my instead of our to describe his possessions. Then a deeper, more theological schism emerges. It concerns the seal. For your generation, the fiery baptism was an absolute, unquestionable necessity. It was the price of salvation, the very foundation of your faith. But for the new generation, those who were born in exile or who were children when they arrived. It is a more abstract concept. They have grown up in a world where the ship is a community, a culture, an economic system. They have not felt the same burning, desperate need for a radical break from a world of sin that you once did. They begin to ask questions. Is the physical act truly necessary? Could the seal not be a spiritual metaphor, a commitment of the heart rather than the flesh? They see the pain, the scars, the childlessness of the elders, then they hesitate. This new, spiritual interpretation is a heresy that strikes at the very heart of your faith. It horrifies you. To them, it seems like a reasonable evolution. To you, it is a betrayal, a cowardly attempt to find a comfortable halfway house between God and the world. This debate over the necessity of the ultimate sacrifice has been documented in the historical records of the sect's later years. It was a conflict that pitted the old guard, the Tsar, against a new, more moderate faction. This internal strife, more than any state persecution, signaled the beginning of the sect's long, slow decline. You find yourself in a meeting, not in a cellar, but in the main room of a sturdy Siberian farmhouse. The argument is no longer a whispered theological debate, it is a heated, passionate conflict. You stand to respond. You are an old man now, your body stooped from the years in the mine. You pull open your shirt to reveal the scarred landscape of your chest. This is not a price, you say, your voice raspy but firm. This is the gate. There is no other way into the kingdom. You are trying to build a ship with a hole in its hull. It will not float. You look around the room and see the division in their eyes. Some nod in grim agreement. Others look away, their faces a mixture of guilt and defiance. The ship is no longer one. It has fractured. The unity forged in the Tsar's prisons is now breaking apart in the Tsar's peace. The years in Siberia stretch into decades. The foe of Alexander II's reign gives way to the harsh, reactionary winter of his successors. But these political shifts in far-off St. Petersburg feel like distant thunder now. Your world is here, in this vast, quiet land of birch forests and endless snow. Your hair is white, your hands are gnarled with age. The fiery zeal of your youth has cooled to a steady, quiet ember. You are an elder, a relic, a living monument to a faith that is slowly, almost imperceptibly, changing around you. You are one of the last of the Tsar, the old guard. Most of the brothers who walked the gauntlet with you, who worked beside you in the Engelstein mines, are gone now, laid to rest in the frozen Siberian earth. You visit their simple wooden graves, each marked with a small, carved dove, and you feel a profound and lonely sense of survivorhood. You are a guardian of a memory that is fading. The ship is still a community. It is still prosperous. Your villages are islands of sobriety and order in a sea of frontier chaos, but the soul of the community is different. The ones who argued against the necessity of the seal has not won the argument, but they have won the war of attrition. Fewer and fewer of the young men and women choose to undergo the fiery baptism. They honor the old ways, they respect you and the other elders, but they do not follow you through the gate. They remain part of the community, but they are something new, something you don't have a name for. They are unsealed believers. They live by the discipline, they contribute to the common coffer, they do not drink or smoke, but they marry and have children. And in this, they are building a future that you cannot be a part of. The very landscape of your villages begins to change. For decades, there was a strange silence here, no crying of babies, no shouting of playing children. Now, you hear those sounds. You see young families. It is a sign of life, of continuity, but to you, it feels like a defeat. Each child's laughter is a note in a song of compromise, a melody of the mortal world creeping back into your sacred space. This gradual dilution of the Skoptsy escort tenet is a process historians still struggle to trace, precisely because it was so quiet and internal. There was no great schism, no dramatic excommunication. There was just a slow generational shift, a quiet decision made in the hearts of hundreds of young believers who could no longer bring themselves to pay the ultimate price. You spend your days in quiet routine. You carve wooden spoons, your hands still skilled despite their stiffness. You teach the children the old spiritual verses, telling them the stories of the helmsman, of the great escape from the world of sin. They listen with wide, respectful eyes, but you know that to them, it is just a story. One day, a young man, the son of one of the spiritual members, comes to you. He is bright and respectful, and you have always liked him. He is to be married. He asks you for your blessing. You look at him, at his young whole, unmarked body, at the simple joy in his face, and you feel no anger, only a vast, weary sadness. The ship needs sailors, not passengers. You tell him, your voice softer than you intended. Your children will be anchors, holding you to this shore. The helmsman called us to the open sea. He does not understand. But we are still the ship, he says earnestly. We live in peace. We help each other. We are still God's people. You look out the window of your small hut at the Siberian landscape. It is beautiful in its own stark, unforgiving way. You have survived the Tsar's hammer, the gauntlet, the mines. You have built a new world in the wilderness. But what if this young man is right? What if this is the final destination? Not a triumphant kingdom of angels on earth, but a few quiet, prosperous villages at the edge of the world, slowly forgetting the terrible, magnificent secret that gave them birth. You give the boy your blessing. What else is there to do? You are an old man, and your scars are fading. They are no longer the mark of a fiery baptism, but the faint, silvery lines of a story that is almost over. The 20th century arrives not with a grand announcement, but as a series of strange, unsettling rumors that drift into your remote Siberian village like smoke from a distant fire. You hear tales of a disastrous war with Japan, of riots in St. Petersburg, of the Tsar granting his people something called a Duma, a parliament. It all feels very far away, the death throes of a world you left behind long ago. Your ship is old but stable. The divisions have settled into a quiet, functional coexistence. The sealed, like you, are a revered but shrinking minority. The unsealed majority live pious, productive lives, their children filling the village with a vitality that is still alien to you. Then comes the Great War, and the world's convulsions can no longer be ignored. Young men from your village, the sons and grandsons of the spiritual faction, are conscripted into the Tsar's army. They go off to fight a war for a world your faith renounces. Some of them do not come back. The old, deep-seated Skoptsy belief that the state is a satanic machine of violence is given a fresh, bitter truth. The finals are falls. A provisional government rises. And then, in the autumn of 1917, a new and far more radical tide washes over the land. The rumors that reach you now are of a different order entirely. They speak of men called Bolsheviks, of a leader named Lenin. They speak of a red flag, of the murder of the Tsar and his family, of a new creed that is sweeping the land. This new ideology is, in its own way, as absolute and demanding as your own. It offers a path to a future paradise, a classless utopia on earth. It demands total allegiance. And it has one central, non-negotiable tenet: there is no God. For all the years of persecution under the Tsars, the conflict was always, in a sense, a family argument. The state was Orthodox Christian, and you were heretics. You were arguing over the same book, the same God. The Bolsheviks are something entirely new. They are not heretics. They are atheists. They do not want to correct your faith. They want to eradicate the very concept of faith itself. The red tide arrives in your quiet corner of Siberia not as an army, but as a handful of young, grim-faced men in leather jackets, carrying rifles and a sheaf of revolutionary decrees. They are commissars, apostles of this new, godless religion. They call a meeting in the village square. The commissar, a young man with the same fiery, unwavering conviction you remember in Cell Ibn's eyes, stands on a cart and delivers a sermon. He speaks of liberation from the opiate of the masses. He tells you that your land is no longer your own. It belongs to the collective. Your businesses are no longer your own. They belong to the people's state. Your very community, your ship, is an illegal, counter-revolutionary organization. The reaction in the crowd is a mixture of confusion and fear. The older, unsealed members, The ones who have built prosperous farms are horrified at the thought of losing everything they have worked for. But it is you, the old, scarred relic, who understands the true, existential nature of the threat. The Tsars tried to destroy your bodies. The Bolsheviks have come to destroy your soul. One of the more obscure tragedies of the early Soviet period was the fate of the religious minorities like yours. While the Bolsheviks are famous for their persecution of the Orthodox Church, their campaign against the so-called sects was, in many ways, even more ruthless. They saw these highly organized, economically independent, and ideologically stubborn communities as a direct threat to the totalitarian control they sought to impose. The commissars are thorough. They dissolve the ship's council of elders. They seize your communal warehouses, your mills, your workshops. The god's coffer, which has survived for over a century, is confiscated in the name of the people. Your carefully built world is dismantled, piece by piece, with the cold, bureaucratic efficiency of the new regime. They try to re-educate you. They set up reading rooms with portraits of Marx and Lenin. They teach the children songs about the glorious revolution. For you, it is the ultimate, blasphemous irony. You who renounced the world are now being forcibly indoctrinated into a new, more demanding worldly religion. You watch as the community your faith built is hollowed out, its economic and social structures repurposed to serve a godless state. The young commissar, seeing your silent, unyielding defiance, confronts you one day. "Old man," he says, not unkindly, "your God is dead. The future is ours." You look at him, at his youth, his certainty, his absolute faith in his new creed. And you give him the same answer you have given to priests and policemen and prison wardens for a lifetime. God does not die, you say. Only men. He does not understand. But you know that the ship is not just a collection of assets or a council of elders. It is an idea. And an idea, even when it is whispered in the deepest, darkest cellar, is harder to kill than any man. The new regime is a far more efficient grinder than the old one. The Tsar's police state was brutal but often clumsy, a machine of rusty gears and corrupt officials. The Soviet state is sharp, modern, and ideologically pure. It leaves no room for shadows, no cracks where a secret community can thrive. Your world, which had survived a century of persecution, dissolves in a matter of years. The collective farms, the Caucasus, are the final blow. Your identity as a ship was always tied to your economic independence, your ability to work for yourselves and for God's coffer. Now, you are forced to work for the state, your labor and its fruits disappearing into the vast, impersonal maw of the 5-year plan. The discipline and efficiency that made you prosperous are now just tools to meet a state-mandated quota. The young people, the children of the spiritual faction, see the writing on the wall. To be associated with the caste rat or cult, as the Soviet propaganda now calls you, is to be branded an enemy of the people. It is a sentence to a life of suspicion, discrimination, and danger. They begin to drift away. They move to the new industrial cities being built in the Urals, places where they can shed their family history and disappear into the anonymous proletariat. They marry outsiders. They learn to sing the new songs. The anchors they put down have pulled them away from the ship and into the mainstream of the Soviet tide. You, and the few other remaining Stari, are left behind, ghosts in your own village. You are too old to be a threat, too strange to be re-educated. The state mostly just ignores you, leaving you to live out your days in your small huts, a bizarre footnote in a world that has moved on. Your story, the grand secret history of the ship, begins its final journey into the realm of myth. It becomes a thing for archives, for the dusty files of ethnograpers and historians of religion. In the Soviet Union, your history is officially rewritten. You are presented as a prime example of the grotesque barbarism of the terrorist era, a symptom of the ignorance and superstition that the bright light of communism has now vanquished. In the West, what little is known about you is filtered through the lens of sensationalism. You become the subject of lurid academic papers and whispered footnotes. The Russian Castration, a historical curiosity lumped in with flagella NTS and other extreme religious sects. The central, stunning paradox of your existence, the direct line between your radical asceticism and Your incredible financial success is mostly misunderstood or ignored. The academic debate over your true nature becomes a quiet, scholarly affair taking place in university libraries thousands of miles away. Were you truly a major economic force, a state within a state, as some terror reports claimed? Or was your influence exaggerated by a paranoid government looking for an excuse to persecute you? Was Sullivan of a genuine religious visionary, or a charismatic charlatan? Was your financial empire a conscious creation, or an accidental byproduct of your unique lifestyle? The scholars argue, they write their papers, they analyze the few surviving documents. But they are missing the lived reality. The feeling of sitting in a steam-filled bonnyard, hearing a promise of salvation, the thrill of closing a major deal for the glory of the ship, the quiet solidarity of the prison march. They are studying the fossilized remains of a creature they can never truly imagine in its living, breathing form. You live long enough to see men walk on the moon, but events you watch on a small, crackling television in the village's common room. It is a wonder, but it is a worldly wonder. It has nothing to do with the salvation of the soul. You are an artifact, a man out of fact, a man out of time. Your own people are gone. Your wealth is a ghost. Your wealth is a half-forgotten name in a history book. You are the last link to a secret history, the final repository of the codes, the songs, the stories. And when you are gone, that history will no longer be a living memory. It will just be echoes in the archives. The world has become a place of strange noises. The roar of tractors in the collective fields, the drone of airplanes crossing the vast, blue Siberian sky, the chatter of the radio from a neighbor's window. You sit on a simple wooden bench outside your hut, the sun warm on your ancient, wrinkled skin, and you listen to a world that you no longer belong to and perhaps never did. Your body is a frail and brittle thing, a dry leaf waiting for the wind. The scars on your chest and the deeper, invisible scars within are no longer sources of pain or pride. They are just there, parts of a story that has grown so old, you sometimes feel you are remembering it from a book you read long ago. The village is no longer your village. It is a Soviet collective like any other. The young people are earnest and full of plans for exceeding production quotas. They are kind to you, in the way one is kind to a very old and slightly mad relative. They call you DEDSHK, grandfather. They bring you bread and milk. They do not know that the quiet old man who carves wooden birds for them was once a secret banker who moved rivers of gold, a holy warrior who defied an emperor. You have outlived everyone. You have outlived your prophet, your comrades, your enemies. You have outlived the Irons and his entire dynasty. You have even, in a way, outlived the ship itself. What is left is just you, and the memory. You think back to the beginning, the mud of the Orwell province, the hunger for something more than bread, the terrifying light in Sullivan of S.I.'s. Was he the returned Christ? Was he a madman? A genius? After a lifetime of devotion, the question feels strangely irrelevant. He was the helmsman. He pointed the way and you sailed. He offered you a chance to burn away the dirty, confusing, compromised world and be reborn as something clean, pure, and absolute. Was it worth it? The agony of the fiery baptism. The long lonely years in street. Petersburg, a gilded ghost in a world of pleasure. The cold, bruising hell of the gauntlet in the mines. All for what? An empire of shadow gold that vanished like smoke. A faith that has faded into a folk memory. A young girl, the great-granddaughter of a man who chose not to receive the seal, comes and sits beside you. She has a wild curiosity and asks you questions no one else dares to. The EDSHKA, she asks, is it true that you believe a white dove will come and carry your soul to heaven? You look at her bright, clear eyes, so full of the simple, uncomplicated light of the world. A world of scraped knees, of summer berries, of first love, of crying babies, a world you chose to renounce. You could try to explain the complex theology, the ecstatic visions, the profound liberation of excising the root of sin. You could tell her about the paradox of gaining the world by denying it. But the words would be meaningless. They are from a language that is no longer spoken. Instead, you simply nod. Yes, you say, your voice a dry rustle of leaves. I do. And in that moment, you realize the final, simple truth. The gold was never the point. The power was never the point. The secret societies, the coded messages, the war with the Tsar, all of it was just the wake of the ship, the churning water it left behind. The point was the voyage itself, the journey toward a state of perfect purity, an impossible, magnificent, and perhaps monstrous ideal. You close your eyes, and for a moment, the noise of the tractors fades. You can hear it again, the sound you have not heard in 70 years, the low, hypnotic humming of the spiritual verses in a dark, earthy cellar. You can feel the warmth of the communal body, the unshakable certainty, the sense of belonging to something vast and secret and holy. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the Siberian sky in hues of purple and orange. It is time to go inside. Your journey is almost over. The last whisper of the white doves is about to fall silent, a final, faint breath in the immense quiet of the Russian night. And now, as our story ends, you can feel the narrative beginning to dissolve like sugar in warm water, leaving behind only a gentle sweetness, a quiet sense of completion. There are no more scenes to picture, no more words to follow, just the soft, steady rhythm of your own breathing pulling you deeper and deeper into a place of profound rest. The journey is over and you have arrived in the safe and peaceful harbor of your own slumber. The figures from our tale, the peasant, the prophet, the secret banker, they can all recede, now fading back into the mists of history, becoming part of the quiet landscape of your dreams. Let their story be a gentle anchor holding you steady in the calm waters of the night, as you drift even further away from thought, away from the waking world into the soft, welcoming darkness of a truly deepened restorative sleep. The final word has been whispered. If your mind is still gently stirring, you're welcome to drift into another of my stories. If not, I wish you a deep and peaceful slumber. Good night.